skies, engines growled outside his apartment. Black SUVs, men in suits, and the same woman from the bus stop stepped out. Before we continue, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now let's begin. You're done here. The security guard's voice had stayed calm, like he was reading a menu. Jacob Mercer had stood under the warehouse lights with a cardboard box in his arms, feeling every eye on him without seeing a single face. His hands had twitched once at the corner of the box, a tiny shake he tried to hide. Inside were a lunch mug, a family photo, and the cheap knit hat his daughter insisted was lucky. The supervisor, Mr. Harlan, didn't raise his voice. That was the cruel part. He just tapped a printed report and said the words everyone wanted to hear. Missing inventory. His signature on the closing log, a pattern they'd noticed. Someone behind Jacob whispered, "Told you," like it was gossip worth saving for the break room. Jacob tried to speak. His throat tightened, then loosened, then tightened again. He managed one sentence. He hadn't taken anything. Harlan didn't even look up. Save it for HR. HR never came. By the time Jacob stepped outside, the air bit into his cheeks and made his eyes water. He blamed the cold. He kept walking because stopping would make it real. His phone buzzed once. A bank alert. Overdraft warning. At home, his 7-year-old daughter, Grace, ran to him in mismatched socks, talking fast about Christmas morning like it was guaranteed. Jacob knelt, hugged her too long, and listened to his own breath get loud in his ears. Later, while she colored on the floor, he opened the fridge. Bare shelves, a half bottle of ketchup, tired pack of eggs. He shut it slowly, like noise could wake up bad luck. He counted what he had left on the kitchen table. $18. He folded it twice, then again, like tighter folds could stretch it. Outside, neighbors laughed in the hallway about holiday plans. Jacob stared at the door, wondering who had set him up and why they'd picked tonight. He told Grace they'd take a quick bus ride later. She smiled, trusting him like it was easy. Jacob grabbed his coat and stepped back into the dark, carrying a secret he couldn't afford to say out loud. On the walk to the bus stop, Christmas lights blinked from warm windows, the kind of scenes that usually made him feel hopeful. Tonight they felt like someone else's life. He kept touching his pocket, checking the folded bills like a nervous habit. The shelter sat under a flickering streetlight. Jacob dropped onto the bench and exhaled, watching his breath fade. He smoothed the cash on his palm and counted again. 18. Food or fare? Pride or survival? Across the street, two strangers glanced over. One of them muttered, "That's him," and laughed low. Jacob stared at the road, jaw tight, and waited for the next bus to show up. Jacob sat with his elbows on his knees, shoulders rounded forward, watching the road like answers might roll in on 4 wheels. The streetlight above the shelter hummed, then dimmed, then brightened again. Each flicker felt personal. He rubbed his hands together, slow, more habit than warmth. The bench creaked when someone sat down beside him. An elderly woman, thin coat, hair pinned back like she had done it the same way for decades. Her hands shook as she emptied a purse onto her lap. Coins scattered, clinking too loud in the quiet. She stopped, stared at them, then pressed her lips together. Jacob didn't look right away. He caught her reflection in the glass behind the shelter. Her shoulders folded inward. A small sound escaped her throat, something between a sob and a breath she couldn't finish. She whispered an apology to no one and started counting. Lost track, started again. A man passing by slowed, glanced at her, then at Jacob. "Rough night," he muttered, half amused, before moving on. Someone across the street laughed. The sound carried. The woman finally spoke. Her voice wobbled but stayed clear. She said she'd been robbed 2 blocks back. Pushed. Purse gone. Phone gone. She'd tried walking but her knees gave out. She was short on fare. Not much, just enough to get home. Jacob nodded without committing to anything. His jaw tightened. He reached into his pocket, felt the folded bills, and pulled his hand back out empty. He stared at the pavement instead. His mind ran numbers fast. Bread, milk, maybe eggs if they were cheap. Grace's face flashed in his head, serious when she was hungry, pretending she wasn't. The woman's hands shook harder. Coins slid off her palm and hit the concrete. She flinched like she'd been struck again. Jacob exhaled through his nose. Quiet. Long. He remembered his father once giving away a jacket in winter, saying, "Cold don't kill you, regret does." At the time, Jacob thought it was just something people said. He stood before he could argue with himself, pulled the money from his pocket. The bills looked smaller in the open air. He placed them in her hand and closed her fingers around them, firm, final. Her eyes widened. She tried to pull back, words tumbling out fast. He shook his head once. No speech, no hero tone, just done. The bus arrived with a hiss of brakes. People lined up. Someone whispered, "Did he really just do that?" Another voice replied, "Man's crazy." The woman boarded last. She turned, met Jacob's eyes, and held them for a beat longer than polite. Something unreadable passed across her face. Then she stepped inside. The doors closed. Jacob stayed seated as the bus pulled away. His pocket felt wrong, too light, too empty. He stood, adjusted his coat, and started walking in the opposite direction. Each step echoed. 4 miles felt longer when you counted them. Behind him, the streetlight buzzed on, steady now, like it had made up its mind too. The walk home stretched and bent time. Jacob moved fast at first, anger pushing his legs forward, then slowed as the cold seeped through his shoes. His breath came out sharp, each step landing heavier than the last. The city felt hollow now. Stores dark, windows glowing with dinners he couldn't smell. A car passed and slowed. Someone leaned out, laughed, and shouted something about Christmas miracles. Jacob didn't look back. He focused on the sound of his shoes scraping concrete, counting steps like it meant something. Halfway home, his phone buzzed again. Another alert. Balance unchanged. He turned the screen face down and kept walking. By the time he reached the apartment building, his calves burned. He paused at the entrance, hand on the door, forcing his face into something neutral before going inside. The hallway smelled like pine cleaner and cheap cologne. Someone had taped paper snowflakes to the walls. Inside the apartment, Grace sat on the couch in her pajamas, knees tucked under her, eyes bright when she saw him. "Did you get it?" she asked, already smiling. Jacob nodded. The lie came out smooth, too smooth. He filled a pot with water and set it on the stove, let it boil longer than necessary. He tore open a packet of noodles he'd been saving and divided it carefully, pretending it was enough. Grace slurped happily, unaware of the math behind every bite. Later, she fell asleep clutching the knit hat from his box. Jacob sat at the table in the dark, staring at the empty pot, listening to the building settle. His chest felt tight, like something heavy was pressing from the inside. He replayed the night at the bus stop, searching for regret. It didn't come. Fear did. Shame did. But regret stayed gone. Near dawn, headlights flashed through the blinds. One car, then another. Engines idled. Doors slammed. Jacob froze, heart thudding hard enough to hurt. He crept to the window and pulled the curtain back an inch. Black SUVs filled the lot. 5 of them. Clean, quiet, wrong. Men in dark coats stepped out, scanning the building. One spoke into a radio. Another checked a list. Jacob backed away slowly. His mind raced, landing on the theft accusation like a bruise you press by mistake. They'd found him. Christmas morning. Of course they had. A knock hit the door. Firm. Controlled. Grace stirred in the bedroom. Jacob closed his eyes once, then opened them. He crossed the room and opened the door. The hallway fell silent. The elderly woman from the bus stop stood there, posture straight, coat replaced with tailored black wool. Her eyes were steady now, clear. Behind her, the men waited. She smiled, just barely. "Good morning, Jacob," she said, like they had unfinished business. And just like that, the night finally caught up with him. Jacob stood in the doorway, blocking the view of the apartment without meaning to. His shoulders squared on instinct, the way they had when trouble came looking at work. Grace's door stayed closed behind him. He focused on that. The woman spoke first, calm and measured. She said his name again, softer this time, like reassurance instead of control. She asked if they could talk. Not inside, just here. A neighbor cracked a door open down the hall. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" Another voice answered, "Look serious." Jacob nodded once and stepped out, pulling the door shut behind him. The hallway felt tighter with the men there, all sharp suits and quiet awareness. No one reached for him. That mattered. The woman explained slowly. No rush, no drama. She said the robbery was real. She said the night had gone wrong fast. She said she hadn't planned to test anyone. She hadn't needed to. She told him who she was. CEO, logistics, supply chains, a company big enough that her absence caused alarms, not sympathy. She said her security had tracked her phone late. She said the buses had cameras. She said they found him without asking much. Jacob listened, eyes fixed on a stain in the carpet. His pulse thudded in his ears. He waited for the catch. There was always one. She said she'd watched the footage twice. Said she'd seen the hesitation, the calculation, the moment where he could have looked away. That pause told me more than the money, she said. One of the men shifted his weight. A radio crackled, then went quiet. She told him she needed someone close, someone who understood loss without turning bitter, someone who couldn't be bought cheap. Jacob laughed once, short and sharp, before he could stop himself. "You've got the wrong guy," he said. His voice cracked. "I just got fired." Her eyes narrowed slightly. Interest, not doubt. She asked why. He told her. Inventory, signature, accusation. No proof, no defense. She nodded like she'd expected it. Said companies bleed from the inside long before anyone notices. Said integrity gets blamed when greed hides well. She offered him a job. Immediate, paid, legit, not charity, work. Jacob shook his head. Too fast, too unreal. He asked what she wanted in return. She answered, without blinking. "The same thing you gave me last night." Silence stretched. A neighbor's phone camera flashed. Grace opened the door behind him, rubbing her eyes. The woman turned, softened instantly, and knelt to her level, introduced herself by first name only. Jacob watched his daughter smile at a stranger again and felt something loosen in his chest. The woman stood, said they'd talk details later, said breakfast was on her today. As the SUVs pulled away, the hallway buzzed with voices, speculation, shock, envy. Jacob closed the door, leaned against it, and slid down until he was sitting on the floor, breathing like he'd just run the whole city. For the first time since the warehouse, the future didn't feel like a locked door. It felt like a question waiting for an answer. Life did not fix itself overnight. It stabilized first. That mattered more. Jacob worked, learned systems, asked questions others avoided. He showed up early and left last, not to impress, but because habits were hard to drop. Paychecks came on time. Groceries filled the fridge. Grace stopped asking careful questions. The theft accusation unraveled quietly. Not justice, just clarity. Another name surfaced, then another. The warehouse called once, apologetic, offering reinstatement. Jacob declined without drama. He had moved on. At night, he studied. Old textbooks, new goals. He remembered who he had been before survival took over. The woman noticed. She encouraged without hovering. She invested time the way serious people do. Months passed.